Deva Narayan Namaskritya Naram Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayam Devi Nashtapraya Shivadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttam Shloke Bhaktir Bhagavati Naistiki. So continuing with the discussion on Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita Adi Lila, Chapter 7, Lord Chaitanya in 5 features, text 122 onwards. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is further speaking on Shankaracharya's philosophy and Vedvyas philosophy. Parinamavadeshwara haina vikari etakahi vivartavadasta najikari. According to Shankaracharya, by accepting the theory of the transformation of the energy of the Lord, one creates an illusion by directly accepting that the absolute truth is transformed. So this is the Vivartavad. Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur comments that if one does not clearly understand the meaning of Parinamvad or transformation of energy, one is sure to misunderstand the truth regarding this material cosmic manifestation and the living entities. In the Chandogya Upanishad, it is said, Sanmula Somya Maha Praja Sad Ayatanaha Sat Pratishtha. The material world and the living entities are separate beings, and they are eternally true, not false. Shankaracharya, however, unnecessarily fearing that by Parinamvad, transformation of energy, Brahman would be transformed, Vikari, has imagined both the material world and the living entities to be false and to have no individuality. By word jugglery, he has tried to prove that the individual identities of the living entities and the material world are illusory, and he has cited the examples of mistaking a rope for a snake or an oyster shell for gold. Thus, he has most abominably cheated people in general. So, again, technical points. So he said, mistaking a rope for a snake, but this is an illusion. Rope is not a snake. Okay, rope is not a snake, but the snake exists somewhere. So that rope on the ground might not be snake, but the snake is there. Otherwise, there is no question of calling the rope a snake if the snake did not exist. Or oyster shell, because there's outer covering of the oyster shell, it looks like gold when it glitters, feels like it's gold. But that doesn't mean gold is not there somewhere else. It is there. So it's not illusion or false. It's just our understanding is wrong. The example of misunderstanding a rope to be a snake is mentioned in the Mandukya Upanishad, but it is meant to explain the error of identifying the body with the soul. Since the soul is actually a spiritual particle, as confirmed in the Bhagavad Gita, Mamaivansha Jivaloke, it is due to illusion, Vivartavad, that a human being, like an animal, identifies the body with the self. This is a proper example of Vivarta or illusion. The words Atatvato Anyatha Buddhir Vivarta iti Udahrata describes such an illusion, to not know actual facts, and thus to mistake one thing for another. As for example, to accept the body as oneself is called Vivartavad. Every conditioned living entity who considers the body to be the soul is deluded by this Vivartavad. Yes, that is illusion. But other way, the material world is not illusion. It is real. It is there. One can be attacked by this Vivartavad philosophy when he forgets the inconceivable power of the omnipotent personality of Godhead. How the Supreme Personality of Godhead remains as he is, never changing, is explained in the Ishopanishad. Purnasya Purnamadya. God is complete. Even if a complete manifestation is taken from him, taken away from him, he continues to be complete. Material creation is manifested by the energy of the Lord, but he is still the same person. His form, entourage, qualities, and so on never deteriorate. The material creation is manifested by the energy of the Lord, but he is still the same person. His form, entourage, qualities, and so on never deteriorate. He always remains complete. Srila Jiva Goswami in his Paramatma Sandarbha comments regarding the Vivartavad as follows. Under the spell of Vivartavad, one imagines the separate entities, namely the cosmic manifestation and the living entities, to be one with Brahm, Brahm Jyoti, or effulgence. This is due to complete ignorance regarding the actual fact. The absolute truth of Parabrahman is always one and always the same. He is completely free from all other conceptions of existence. He is completely free from false ego, for he is the full spiritual identity. It is absolutely impossible for him to be subjected to ignorance and fall under the spell of a misconception or vivartavad. The absolute truth is beyond our conception. One must admit that the absolute truth has unblemished qualities that he does not share with every living entity. He is never tainted in the slightest degree by the flaw of the ordinary living beings. Everyone must therefore understand the absolute truth to possess inconceivable potencies. So this is how Jiva Goswami has explained that this is absolute truth, that he has inconceivable potencies and we cannot subject him to our misconceptions and we cannot understand him also. But Vivartavad or Shankaracharya's philosophy, they put him and all the living entities that we are in illusion. That's not the truth actually. Text 123. Vasuta parinamavada sei se pramana dehe atma buddhiye vivartera sthana. Transformation of energy is a proven fact. It's a false bodily conception of the self that is an illusion. The jiva or living entity is a spiritual spark who's part of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Unfortunately, he thinks the body to be the self, and that misunderstanding is called vivarta, or acceptance of untruth to be truth. The body is not the self, what animals and foolish people think that it is. Vivarta, illusion, does not, however, denote a change in the identity of the spirit soul. It is a misconception that the body is a self, as is a self. That is an illusion. Similarly, the Supreme Personality of Godhead does not change when his external energy, consisting of 8 gross and subtle material elements listed in the Bhagavad Gita, acts and reacts in different phases. So Supreme Lord does not change because there are changes in the Maya or energy of the external energy of the Lord. But the philosophy of Shankaracharya says there is some vikar, some change happens. For them, Brahm Jyoti is ultimate. So some change happens in Brahm Jyoti and Supreme Lord appears, or Krishna appears, or Ram appears. But that is not how it works. Avichintya Shakti Yukta Shri Bhagavan Ichhaya Jagat Rupe Paye Parinam. The Supreme Personality of Godhead is opulent in all respects. Therefore, by his inconceivable energies, he has transformed the material cosmic manifestations. So this we studied in Srimad Bhagavatam, how everything comes about and how everything is dissolved. तथापि अचिंत्य शक्ते है अविकारी प्राकृत चिंतामणि ताहे दृष्टांत ये धारी. Using the example of a touchstone, which by its energy turns iron to gold and yet remains the same, we can understand that although the Supreme Personality of God transforms his innumerable energies, he remains unchanged. So, material example, even a touchstone, it touches iron and turns it into gold, and yet it remains the same. There is no change happens. So if a material thing can happen, can do something like that, why can't Supreme Lord? नाना रत्न राशि है चिंता मणि है तथापि हम मणि रहे स्वरूपे अविकृत. Although a touchstone produces many varieties of valuable jewels, it nevertheless remains the same. It does not change its original form. प्राकृत वस्तुते यति अचिंत्य शक्ति है ईश्वरेर अचिंत्य शक्ति की विस्मय. If there is such inconceivable potency in material objects, why should we not believe in the inconceivable potency of the Supreme Personality of Godhead? The argument of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu described in this verse can be very easily understood even by a common man. If he simply thinks of the activities of the sun, which has been giving off unlimited amounts of heat and light since time immemorial, and yet has not even slightly decreased in power. Modern science believes that it's by sunshine that the entire cosmic manifestation is maintained. And actually, one can see how the actions and reactions of sunshine maintain order throughout the universe. The growth of vegetables and even the rotation of planets take place due to the heat and light of the sun. Sometimes, therefore, modern scientists consider the sun to be the original cause of creation, not knowing that sun is only a medium, for it's also created by the supreme energy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Aside from the sun and touchstone, there are many other material things that transform their energy in different ways and yet remain as they are. It is not necessary, therefore, for the original cause, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, to change due to changes or transformations of its different energies. So another example given here is of sun. So because of sun, so many things happen, but sun remains as it is. It doesn't change. Although it's been given of unlimited amount of heat and light since time immemorial, and yet has not even slightly decreased in power. So why not the Supreme Lord? Why can't he do that? The falsity of Sripad Shankaracharya's explanation of Vivartavad and Parinamavad has been detected by the Vaishnavacharyas, especially Jiva Goswami, whose opinion is that actually Shankar did not understand the Vedanta Sutra. Or he is Lord Shiva himself, but he did understand, but he was ordered to explain it in a different way, so that's what he did. In Shankara's explanation of one sutra, Anandamaya Abhyasa, he has interpreted the affix mayat with such word jugglery that this very explanation proves that he had little knowledge of the Vedanta Sutra, but simply wanted to support his impersonalism through the aphorisms of the Vedanta philosophy. Actually, however, he failed to do so because he could not put forward strong arguments. For acharyas like Srila Jiva Goswami or Prabhupada or other acharyas, yes, it doesn't look like strong argument, but for us, we can definitely get convinced by these arguments. In this connection, Srila Jiva Goswami cites the phrase Brahma Pucham Pratishtha, which gives Vedic evidence that Brahman is the origin of everything. In explaining this verse, Sripad Shankaracharya interpreted various Sanskrit words in such a way that he implied, according to Jiva Goswami, that Vyasadeva had very little knowledge of higher logic. Such unscrupulous deviation from the real meaning of the Vedanta Sutra has created a class of men who, by word jugglery, try to derive various indirect meanings from the Vedic literatures, especially the Bhagavad Gita. One of them has even explained the word Kurukshetra refers to the body. And many so-called scholars, they have come up with this idea. Kurukshetra means body, and the five senses are Panch Pandav, and mind is Krishna, and the desires are Gaurav, something like that. Such interpretations imply, however, that neither Lord Krishna nor Vyasadeva had a proper sense of word usage or etymological adjustment. So, according to their interpretations. Thus, the interpretations lead one to assume that since Lord Krishna could not personally sense the meaning of what he was speaking, and Vyasadeva did not know the meaning of what he was writing, Lord Krishna left his book to be explained later by the Mayavadis. This is from their interpretation, it looks like this. Such interpretations merely prove, however, that the proponents have very little philosophical sense. And Vyasadeva knew these kind of people will be there in the future. That's why whenever Krishna spoke in Bhagavad Gita, he always wrote Shri Bhagavan Vacha. Always. To make sure that we understand the Supreme Personality of Godhead is speaking these verses. So instead of wasting one's time falsely deriving such indirect meanings from the Vedanta Sutra and other Vedic literatures, one should accept the words of those books as they are. In presenting Bhagavad Gita as it is, therefore, we have not changed the meaning of the original words. Similarly, if one studies the Vedanta Sutra as it is, without whimsical and capricious adulteration, one can understand the Vedanta Sutra very easily. Srila Vyasadeva therefore explains the Vedanta Sutra, beginning from the first sutra, Janmadhyasya Yata, in the Srimad Bhagavatam, where he says, I meditate upon him. Him means Lord Krishna, the transcendental reality, who is the primeval cause of all causes, from whom all manifested universes arise, and in whom they dwell, and by whom they are destroyed. I meditate upon that eternally effulgent Lord who is directly and indirectly conscious of all manifestations and yet is fully independent. The Supreme Personality of Godhead knows very well how to do everything perfectly. He is a Abhigya, always fully conscious. The Lord therefore says in the Bhagavad Gita that he knows everything, past, present, and future, but that no one but a devotee knows him as he is. Therefore, the absolute truth, the personality of Godhead, is at least partially understood by devotees of the Lord. But the Mayavadi philosophers who unnecessarily speculate to understand the absolute truth simply waste their time. And not just waste their time, they waste their energy, waste their lives actually. It's very simple. And this is what Chaitanya Mahaprabhu actually, when he met Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya in Jagannath Puri. So Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, he was a Mayavadi scholar, but he also ended up serving Chaitanya Mahaprabhu very nicely. So by Mahaprabhu's mercy, he could understand the real truth, tattva. But even before that, Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya tried to explain Vedanta Sutra to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. For 7 days, he spoke continuously on Vedanta Sutra to Mahaprabhu. And Mahaprabhu did not say a word. So after 7 days, he said, oh, do you even understand anything what I'm saying? Because you didn't say anything. You didn't respond, you didn't ask any questions. So Mahaprabhu said, well, I understood Vedanta Sutra, but your explanation of Vedanta Sutra is like covering the radiance of sun with some cloud. You're covering it completely. Actually, the meaning of Vedanta Sutra is very clear. So then he explained gave his explanation of Vedanta Sutra. Then Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya understood, yes, he is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, because no one can explain like Mahaprabhu did. But here also Mahaprabhu is taking time to explain everything to all these Mayavadi sannyasis. So idea is so that they all can get some mercy and get and when become devotees of the Lord. Pranav se mahavakya vedera nidan Ishvara sarupa pranav sarva vishwadham. The Vedic sound vibration Omkar, the principal word in the Vedic literatures, is the basis of all Vedic vibrations. Therefore, one should accept Omkar as a sound representation of the Supreme Personality of Godhead and the reservoir of the cosmic manifestation. So this is what Mayavadis say. In the beginning, there was only sound, and that sound is Om, or Omkar. Pranav, it's also called Pranav. But then the question is, where does Omkar come from? Where does the sound come from? And Krishna says, Pranava Sarva Vedeshu, that he is the Omkar mentioned in all the Vedas. He's a Pranav. But this part, Mayavadis very conveniently, they just disregard. In the Bhagavad Gita, the glories of Omkar are described as follows. Om iti ekaksharam brahma vyaharam mam anusmaram yah prayati tyajam deham sayati parmam gate. This verse indicates that Omkar or Pranav is a direct representation of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Therefore, if at the time of death one simply remembers Omkar, he remembers the Supreme Personality of Godhead and is therefore immediately transferred to the spiritual world. Omkar is a basic principle of all Vedic mantras, for it is a representation of Lord Krishna, understanding of whom is the ultimate goal of the Vedas, as stated in Bhagavad Gita. Mayavadi philosophers cannot understand these simple facts explained in the Bhagavad Gita, and yet they are very proud of being Vedantists. Sometimes, therefore, we refer to the Vedanti philosophers as Vedantists. For those who have no teeth, Vedantis. V means without, and Danti means possessing teeth, or means without teeth means they have no value. The statement of the Shankar philosophy, which are the teeth of the Mayavadi philosopher, also is broken by the strong arguments of Vaishnava philosophers, such as the great Acharyas, especially Ramanujacharya, Shivata Ramanujacharya and Madhacharya, break the teeth of the Mayavadi philosophers, who can therefore be called Vedantis, or toothless. Again, long purport. And in the end, I'll just go to the end. Lord Shri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has declared, Mayavadi Bhashya Shunile Hai Sarvanash. Anyone who hears commentary on the Vedanta Sutra from the Mayavad school is completely doomed. As explained in Bhagavad Gita, Vedesha Sarveraham Vidya. All Vedic literature aims at understanding Krishna. Mayavad philosophy, however, has deviated everyone from Krishna. Therefore, there is a great need for the Krishna consciousness movement all over the world to save the world from degradation. Every intelligent and sane man must abandon the philosophical explanation of the Mayavadis and accept the explanation of the Vaishnava Acharyas. One should read Bhagavad Gita as it is to try to understand the real purport of the Vedas. So then and then only it is possible. Otherwise, there's so much of this Mayavad literature going on, and people generally like to follow this. I don't know why. But that's not the right understanding. Okay, we'll stop here. See anybody has any questions or comments?
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna.
Prabhuji says Mayavad philosophy is easy to understand. That is why people get inclined to it very easily, or is something like it's attractive, or like what? या वो अपने मन की बात बोलते हैं इसलिए समझ में आता है जल्दी लोगों को.
It's not easy to understand. It's not at all. You listen to somebody, because problem is now we have listened to some Western philosophy, so it will not make sense at all. It's not at all easy to understand, but the problem is people think what is difficult to understand must be very hi-fi. That's why it's so difficult to understand.
Sorry, I didn't get you.
It must be very hi-fi philosophy. That's why it's so difficult to understand.
Okay.
So that's why they say, yeah, it must be the true philosophy. Where devotees mean they're just sentimentals. They're just chanting and dancing. That's all they do.
Okay.
But that's not the truth, actually. If we listen to any of these Mayavadi scholars, or even read Bhagavad Gita by them, it's so confusing, actually. Prabhupada has given wonderful commentary on Bhagavad Gita, very easy to understand. But if you read anybody's Chinmaya Mission, anybody's Bhagavad Gita, it's so confusing, so confusing. What is it? What are they trying to say? We can't figure it out.
Chinmaya Mission also is keeping a, this thing, Prabhupada's Bhagavad Gita as it is with them.
Oh, that is just for the
According to them,
shlokas. Just for the shlokas.
Okay.
Not for the commentary.
Okay. Thank you, Prabhuji.
It's
Jai Srila
difficult.
Prabhupada.
Okay, Manta, thank you. You all have
Hare
safe and
Krishna.
good.
Jai Srila Prabhupada.
Jai Srila.
Hare Krishna.